Higher Education Department's acting CFO Lucian Kearns joins us now for more on that. Good to have you, sir, and thank you very much for your time. Is there material underspending that was recorded over the period?
Very good evening to you, Tabi, and to your viewers as well. Let me just put this in perspective for yourself, Tabu, and your viewers. The amount cited of 580 million is an amount that was carried through to 2 financial years, which is the 22-23 financial year and the 23-24 financial year. Now, importantly to note, maybe I should just give perspective to that. In the 22-23 financial year, an amount of about 462 million had to be returned to National Treasury. And in 23-24 financial year, an amount of 117 million was surrendered to the National Treasury. Now, obviously, when one looks at the budget of any department, it comes through and it is divided into certain economic classifications.
Yes.
And an economic classification, for example, would be compensation of employees, transfers,
yes.
Goods and services, etc.
Yes.
So the bulk of the returns that we had for those 2 financial years was under compensation of employees, which was predominantly attributed to vacancies that the department has suffered.
So that's exactly, so the compensation to employees would have made a bulk of that. So there are employees that were supposed to take particular critical posts. What posts are those?
Well, the sector that we are in education, Tabi, you must understand, it's quite a massive profile. Just to give an indication, we've got more than about 30,000 posts. And it not only includes the head office, but it also includes the university sector, the CET sector, and the TVET sectors. Now, if one looks at the various main functions, if you look at universities and TVET, those pertain to lecturers and support staff. If you look at the head office, and that also pertains obviously to the administrative staff that we have. So if you look at TVET colleges, for example, main posts would be your principals, your deputy principals, your campus managers, absolute. And then for universities, you're looking at lecturers, etc. Within the head office, it also pertains predominantly to, we have the executive post, you have it from director post upwards, that you have vacancies. I don't have the infinite detail in terms of how many vacancies there are, but in your DDG level, I think it's just the acting CFO, which is myself, where the CFO post is vacant at the moment. And then the next level is the chief director level, where you also have quite a few posts vacant, which is especially also in the university sector or branch that we have at the head office. So that gives some perspective in terms of the posts that we have that are vacant.
Naturally, you would then flag these posts at your level because you would see them, they are budgeted for, that allocation has been made. So if the allocation is made and the allocation is not used, it must raise some red flags for you. Is there a reason that is given why those vacancies are not being filled?
Tabi, let me respond in this way. Vacancies is not something where you can say you fill those posts and by next week all those posts remain filled. It's one of those elements that you deal with on a regular basis. Just to give perspective, in the 22-23 financial year, we had about a 13%, just over 13.4% vacancy rate. And that was diminished to around about 9.9% in 23-24 financial year. So obviously what we've done is we have earmarked, and in fact, we've looked at the vacancies throughout the sector so that one can identify where the critical posts were. That also gives perspective to what we did with an issue. I think it was instruction issued by the DPSA to look at how do we fill vacancies, because obviously we need to confirm first and foremost that budgets are available, and then DPSA would confirm whether we can fill those posts. But we have for each of those sectors, the TVET sectors, university sector, the CET sector, as well as the head office administrative we've identified which are these critical posts so that one can give, advertise those and have them filled. But like I said, it is really a moving target, because once you have, some of these posts filled, and then they're vacant again. TVET at the moment, I think it's quite suffering at probably the highest between themselves and universities, the highest level of vacancies that we have there in that sectors.
So you're saying 2022-2023 financial year, the material underspending also at the place of vacancies would have been at 462 million. Now 2023-2024, 117 million. To what do you attribute that drop? Others would look at it and say, did then Treasury look at the previous financial year and say, oh, well, you didn't fill those posts, you don't need those posts, therefore we've cut your budget. Hence, you're seeing a lower amount that could have been underspent in the next financial year.
No, it wasn't that perspective. What has happened is, if one looks at the most predominantly 22 financial year going to 23, it was just outside the COVID period. And so our business was different. There were quite a few considerations that one had to consider there. And in fact, if one looks at how the business was conducted in that financial year as opposed to a 23-24 financial year, it was different. There was none of these programs where we could say that we don't need those funds anymore. Neither could we say that because of the vacancies, those posts aren't available, are not required. And therefore, because we had to prove every year, that when we apply for funds, because National Treasury wouldn't not just give you funds if you can't make out a business case and motivate for it. So therefore, they would also be supportive for the programs that we're running. In the 22-23 financial year, something like a tender that we put out for stationery, for example, which was quite a massive amount under goods and services, it just couldn't materialize because they had to be cancelled because it was just non-responsive. In the last financial year, it was way more better, because I think most of the programs and what we've identified, budgeting process was materialized. Therefore, I think a severe drop into the numbers in terms of 460 to 117. I must just add, Thabo, in the budget, if I look at just last financial year, in fact, 22-23, our spending was 99.6%. In 23-24, our spending was 99.9%. Now, if you say 99.9% and you still have 117 million that is unspent, it gives you some idea as to how big our budget is. So for 23-24 financial year, we had a budget of 130 billion rand. So those are huge numbers. And like I said in the beginning, it's a massive profile to handle, and it's no excuse for it. But obviously, every year we target ourselves to improve so that one do not have case of underspending at any of our programs, and that for us is always the ideal, to make sure that we don't surrender funds where there's still major requirements by the sector. Type of things.
So we admit that then vacancies could have been quite critical in the delays in spending. Let's then just go through the other parts of the programs, or as you put them, how budgets are allocated that could have probably had an impact. Complex procurement processes. You're saying your procurement processes are quite easy to engage with, and therefore there's not a huge amount of money that is underspent because just tenders couldn't materialize.
What I'm saying is procurement is not just, I won't say it's easy, because obviously it's quite diverse. Again, if one looks at normal procurement of goods and services, through your request for quotations, those are quite easy. When it comes to we have to put our tenders and bids, obviously we know in the public sector, the turnaround on bid processes are not as desirous as one would want to have it, because they are lengthy processes. And also to that, if one then looks at construction or infrastructure procurement, it even is much more complicated. Now, that is not something that one can just finalize in a period that normal bid tender processes, because there are way more variances that weigh into a procurement of that nature.
Yeah.
But I think that if I look at it overall, we've never had, if I look at the tender processes that we had thus far in those 2 financial years, the only one that I can remember, think of is the one in the 22-23 financial year that we had a bit of challenges. The one in 23-24, not many of our tenders were as delayed as in the prior year. And I am hoping that in this current year that we are in, certainly we have working way more stringent against our procurement plan to make sure that we target it within the financial year, to schedule it, to make sure that we reach our targets, and we're doing quite well as it is at this point of time, Thabo.
We'll speak to Labour in a moment, but you would have some of your stakeholders who would raise an issue, for example, of other 2 things that could be happening, or maybe 3. One is the delays could be attributed to the fact that you're paying suppliers late and you're paying your claims late. And so there's money that's left over that's just sitting there. Or your processes are delaying the process of paying your suppliers. But another one would then say there's some non-implementation of projects that we could be looking at that would lead to that money being underspent. How would you respond to those 3?
No, I've said in the beginning, it's not all those programs. I've made it quite clear that the bulk of the unspent funding is on the compensation of employees, which is attributed to vacancies. The remainder is a very small percentage is on goods and services. If I look at 27, let me just look at 23-24 financial year. I think if that smaller amount was attributed to transfers, there would actually probably nothing left out. I think there was about less than 30,000 in that year for goods and services. So as it pertains to the other element that you've mentioned on paying off suppliers, I think we pride ourselves. I think last financial year, we were at 99% of making sure that our payments are within 30 days. And I think that's quite an achievement for such a big budget that we have. It certainly is not an easy task, but surely that's one of the elements that it's not only in the performance agreements of all the managers, but it's also something that we monitor, because we need to give feedback on a monthly basis to National Treasury as well as the presidency on our performances of late payments. And we've not had cases like that, unless there have been good reason why, unless, for example, there's a dispute and an invoice could not be settled, but that does not contribute to a 30 days counting as yet. But there's none of that I can really refer to at this point of time. Yeah.
In a country where, they would say unemployment is so high, and I'm sure Labour is going to bring that up, why would we find ourselves in a situation where the department is not spending on getting people hired? Why are we underperforming as far as that particular activity is concerned?
Yeah, I've said earlier, I think what we've done is, Thabo, since the last 2 financial years up to now, is, like I said, we've identified the vacancies, we have prioritized the vacancies, and we've advertised most of them. Now, again, interviewing or the selection and recruitment process has also its own time frame. And by the time you do appoint, and it also then happens that attrition of post transpires. So you'd find that you need to start recruiting all over again for a post that you've just filled, and another one is becoming vacant. And especially, like I said, if you look at an establishment as big as the higher education, it's rather a cumbersome assignment for us to fill. But surely we are definitely if I give you the figures, like I said, the percentage increase or improvement, it is, I'm sure by the end of, in fact, one of the first assignments that our new minister has given us is to say, make sure that you get to this post and have them filled. And we're working tirelessly on getting it filled as soon as possible.
Lucian, let me appreciate your time. Thank you very much for coming on. That is the department's acting CFO, Lucian Kearns, there. Well, there you heard from the CFO. What are your thoughts? We're in tonight, 072 110 558, for giving us the views as to why there was underspending.